Now, when I think of this Ferrari F40, this Lego Ferrari F40, I think of this car that we're under right now. Now, it's not because it has a 3-litre V8 engine with 450 horsepower and a turbo that wants to rip you off the road as soon as you put your foot down, but it's because this is Lego and you can literally swap out parts and it's pretty simple. And it's the same with this car. This Nissan Leaf has 10 or 12 bolts that fix this battery pack in. There's no refrigerant lines and there's no coolant lines. So it's about as simple as an EV battery swap can be. At least that's what I think so far. Anyway, we better go on with this, eh? So the challenge is simple. Let's put this battery, 62 kilowatt hour battery that was out of a 2022 Nissan Leaf, that was never designed to go in this vehicle that originally had a 30 kilowatt hour, into this car, not with the garage lift, but with my driveway and some jacks, some axle stands and blocks of wood. And if those stakes aren't high enough, let's do all of that by lunchtime. It's just gone 8 o'clock, so I'm hoping that we can have this on the road, on its wheels, and working by 12 o'clock. We better get started. Okay, so what are we going to need to upgrade this battery? Because this pack is slightly deeper, we need to add some bracketry to fill the gap between the original chassis and the new battery. More on that later. Then a new pyro fuse, which annoyingly didn't come with this battery, but was solved by a fellow battery tinkerer who didn't need one for the pack that he was stripping down. Then, because this pack weighs 100 kilograms more, we need a set of springs from the donor vehicle, the Leaf Plus springs. Then a range of bolts, most of which are original with some additions, and an OBD reader connected to a mobile phone with Leafspy Pro. We need to put the under trays back on, especially the front to keep the motor and connectors protected. And then finally the cam bridge, which will be spoofing the car into working with the newer pack. The cam bridge came unflashed as a basic £8 board from AliExpress. I've added the 3D printed case, wiring and cables. It almost looks professional if I do say so myself. So before we fit this battery, because we're going for the bigger battery, we've got to install this piece of steel basically here, and this bracket which is going at the back. Both, this is extended, this is entirely made up. But cameraman, could you go and get that socket from the garage for me? I'll look after this. Got it? Now, cameraman isn't mechanically minded, so another one of my aims for today is to get cameraman involved with bolting things up. He'll hate that. Anyway, here he comes. There you go. So now, I've set that up.
What are you doing?
Well, all these bits, I keep trying to roll over them and they're doing my head in. I can't roll my wheels over them and I lie on it and it hurts my back. So yes, that's right, I'm vacuuming my drive. Maybe I should start a GoFundMe for a new drive. Or maybe we should do something crazy with it, like fit a wireless charger for an EV. That'd be pretty interesting and justify an upgrade to the drive, wouldn't it?
Now, people will tell you that a job like this is really unsafe to be doing. And yes, if you don't know what you're doing, of course it can be unsafe. But by removing the 12 volts, the contactors won't be able to close and output any high voltage, and with the service cutout removed, the pack will not be able to create a circuit. So the only way you get a shot from this pack doing this job is if the pack itself had a fault. And of course you can test between positive and negative and the casing of the battery to confirm that before you start.
Now, every time I work on a vehicle, I go underneath, forget to wear glasses, and I end up with mud in my eyes. There's the mud in my eyes. And it hurts, and I usually end up running inside, crying and trying to get mud out my eyes. But the previous owner, James, kindly provided me with these sunglasses by leaving them in his car. Oh, I can't do this anymore. They are prescription sunglasses. I cannot see through them. Anyway, I probably need to get myself some goggles. But having said that, working under an electric car, you haven't got the oil and muck that you have with a normal petrol or diesel car, apart from the shocks, the axles, the differential. Yeah, pretty much it's not that mucky under here. Anyway, I am fixing up the rear brackets, and then we'll move on to the side brackets. 17mm and then 13 on the back, and then there's a little connector. This is my 13. This is 14, but it'll be fine. There's the mud in my eyes.
Don't mind me trying to get that 14mm off when I should have used a 13.
You can stop recording now. Same again on this side. Stupid flappy piece. I'm gonna end up like cutting this so it's like.
Earlier in the video, I mentioned that the brackets had to be modified. Due to the larger pack being slightly deeper, an extra section needs fabricating on the brackets to basically extend them as if they've got a third bolt. No trouble, with a few bits of steel and a MIG welder, and then finished off with some hammerite paint.
Looking good. Just grind that back, and then we've got to rinse and repeat.
Now, if you know why this happened, let me know in the comments below. That reminds me, I need to order the replacement part for that. It would have been nice to include in our timer the time taken for making these brackets and painting them and so on, but I'm not going to count paint drying time in this battery upgrade. But with those dry, they can go back on the vehicle, can't they? And then our side brackets are made up by simply drilling some holes in a piece of steel. I did have some footage of this, but I want you to think it was this easy.
Hey cameraman, could you pass me this? Now one of these, this one, I drilled the hole out a bit too big on the one end because I misunderstood it, but... Okay, do the other side. That's it. Now this one along here. Actually, if I hold the camera, could you just whiz this in?
Yes, challenge achieved. But I think I'm better off leaving cameraman to do camera stuff while I fit battery stuff, eh? Look at that angle.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a good point for us to see how we're doing for time, hey?
I'll put this round here for in a minute.
It's just 4 times my body weight.
Do you know if you've seen yourself recently?
Now I finished the banter with the cameraman, it always amazes me how much you can do with a supermarket trolley dolly thing that you can buy for 20 quid on eBay.
We're getting cocky. I think it needs to go back quite a bit.
Walkies! I wonder how many of you, your dog just looked at you as if to say, are we going? If your dog did that, don't forget to like and subscribe, thumbs up this video.
Maybe a tad more under centrally. Hold it there.
like a glove.
Don't you know, pump it up, you got to pump it up. Sounds like a kid's swing, doesn't it? It's got childhood memories, this has. Let's do the other side. With our pack jacked up, our positioning is actually pretty good. We just need to move the pack back a little bit so that it will line up with the bolt holes. I'll put one of these blocks under, and then we just need to move the jacks backwards, but it's really wobbly, so we got to do it slowly and in unison. That didn't go right. Now it's just a case of lining the bolt holes up without getting under the pack, bearing in mind that at this point it could be considered an unstable weight. I wish I'd put more blocks underneath those other blocks to stop it from falling any distance, but hey ho. Fortunately, there's a lot of bolt holes, so we can line the pack up, and they're all a bit oversized, which means we can fix one or two in place and then make final adjustments to get the pack into the correct position. This felt like it took a while to get this pack moved into the correct position safely, and cameraman made sure to remind me of this fact.
Remember when Clarkson said that the Nissan factory churned out more than all of the Italian car manufacturing put together in Sunderland, that one factory?
Yeah.
It's kind of mad. As in, I was going to say they probably built 5 of them and had them off the production line the time we've done this.
Okay, try giving that a pull. So everything on the far side is bolted in loosely to give me a bit of wiggle room this side. I'm still avoiding going under it. We've got 2 jacks, we've got blocks under it, but I'm still don't want to crawl under it. So this side, we're just going to put our bolts in. We've got a long one to replace the hole that was here. We have these made up brackets that slide in the tremors here. Just want to spin that bolt in a little more before I tighten it. And then I've got one that goes at the front. As you can see, I'm using additional axle stands to support this battery in the case of the jacks dropping down. Couple of ground straps that I just bend down. Now, none of these are getting tightened up fully at the minute. I just want everything in, so we know we've got it lined up, and then we can whiz it up fully. But everything is lining up nicely so far. Like a glove.
Spanner's behind your shoulder. Other shoulder.
Now, this is a universal thing of working on vehicles, right? You have a tool in your hand, you put it down somewhere, and it isn't there 2 seconds later when you plan to use it. So now we're ready to buzz all these up. And I'll go around the other side for the others. With the pack bolted into place, I feel like this is the most challenging part of this over.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm just having 5 minutes.
Are you taking the battery out of that clock?
Alright. I'll put it back in and I'll reset it to the time we're meant to be on. So, securing both front ground straps, we can then move on to the electrics of this battery. Now, I suppose you could argue that those ground straps are actually electrical. Maybe we've already started the electrical part of this. All I do know is, those little bolts seem to take forever to screw down. I thought I knocked it then. So this is keyed, so it can only go in the one way. And then that spins down till it clicks. Got the aircon pump, clicks in, locking tab, and then our big ass battery cable. Oh. And that's locked in nicely too. It has a little bracket to hold it here, which just seems to ratchet on.
Now, because we haven't done a direct swap with the 30 kilowatt hour battery this Leaf originally came with, and we're upgrading it to the biggest and latest capacity, there are a couple of things that we need to do before we connect 12 volts and just drive off. We have to install what's called a CAN bridge. A CAN bridge mimics what the vehicle control module expects to see and what the battery management system expects to see, so that they both work together happily. The result is we get a vehicle that works and shows the correct range. We also need to make sure that a fault code doesn't come on the dash by clearing a code within the Leafspy software, which I mentioned at the start. Now, before we drop this pack down back on its wheels, another job I did in preparation was swapping out the original springs for new springs. In fact, they're not new springs at all. They are springs from the same vehicle that the pack came from. Now, I maintain that Nissan Leafs are one of the easiest vehicles to work on. In fact, all Nissans. With a couple of bolts loosened, a jack underneath the spring literally just drops out. 10 minutes and you can have both of these springs changed. When was the last time you dropped a spring on your camera? Okay, we're getting distracted. Let's not forget that we're trying to get this done by lunchtime. Time to move on to the CAN bridge.
So I've ripped off some paneling here, but we're out of the mucky stuff now, so the sweaty gloves can come off. Down here, these two wires here are our CAN bus wires, which I've got to try and work out getting this plug out.
No, not that one.
It's quite scary.
So how much does a CAN bridge like this cost? Well, £8. Plus a bit of extra wiring to make it look neat. You see, Nissan Leafs have been around for a long time and they're largely unchanged over that time period. This gives rise to people like Dala, who I previously worked with on my videos. It gives him something to play with.
You picked a very tricky inverter, yes.
People like Dala have the skills to reverse engineer the CAN bus data to fool the vehicle into thinking it's connected to the original pack. There are of course off-the-shelf systems that you can spend a lot of money on to do this job.
You saw them just pop out.
In fact, Dala did once sell the CAN bridge as a product, but his life moved on and he wasn't able to put the time into continued sales and support. But all of his code is on GitHub and it still has support. Nothing has changed that means this won't work. So, yet again, I've got to thank Dala for this one. Thank you for your fantastic GitHub guide and relevant code. Which brings me on to, how accessible is this for the general DIY mechanic like myself? Yes, I've got skills as an electrician. Yes, I've done timing belts and clutches since I was 17, but really, I don't feel that this project has been hard so far. I really think any DIY mechanic could have done what I've done so far, which makes me think, what will the world of DIY mechanics be in 10 to 20 years time
when more and more EVs hit the road. Let's face it, to work on any vehicle, you've got to have understanding of electronics and sensors. Cars have become complicated for our driving pleasure, so EVs are not that much of a step up. In a lot of ways, they're simpler. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Okay, so the last thing for us to do is put the car on. If we go into Leafspy, now we've got an iKey system fault there. We're going to have a bunch of faults because we've had things disconnected that shouldn't be, but we need to clear the faults. Now we will have a turtle fault if we don't go onto Leafspy and clear the code and change it. But really good, we are seeing 208 miles in here, which is absolute fantastic. So the CAN bridge is working. But if we go into settings and turn on the service screen, okay, so don't ask why it wasn't coming up a minute ago, but now when I clear, I can choose pair with EVbattery 3102. I had to clear the high voltage battery issues for it to then show up. So it must recognize that there's something going on and it needs this code. So let's execute that, which will get rid of our turtle, and it has indeed got rid of that on the screen. We have a motor controller code, which I can clear that and see if that goes away. Got a couple of brake chargers. We'll clear them all and then go from there. Right, so we have 208 miles on here. We have no errors anymore. Let's stick it into drive. Hey, yes, it works. But we can't go any further because this thing doesn't have an MOT, so the edge of my drive is the limit for now. Backwards, have we got backwards? I'll just move this clock. Yeah. And we go backwards. And we have done all of this in just over 3 hours. Crazy.
So we know it drives, we should check whether this thing charges and then get it to its MOT. And of course, it charges just fine.
So people of the internet, we have an MOT certificate. In fact, we have a failure and then a pass. Now, it did fail on a couple of things, which I'll put on the screen now and I'll explain outside. It was a good idea in my head to kind of peek over in the boot, but it's actually smaller in here than I expected. Man traps himself in boot and fire brigade have to get him out. Ugh. Okay, so we failed on a ball joint and an anti-roll bar link, and the handbrake being not up to scratch, but that's not that bad. And I got the garage to do it while it was there. As much as I wanted to do it and film it for content, should I have done that? Let me know in the comments. I thought it was just easier to leave it with the garage and get this vehicle on the road as soon as possible, because I was dying to test whether this big battery upgrade was actually going to work. And I'm at the very end of the capacity of the battery now, and I'm going to take it all the way down and see that everything is in order as we get low in the pack. Now, what do I think of this vehicle? Well, it's fairly slow, it rolls, and it loves to bing and beep at you, and it loves to remind you to go slowly in it. Now, I don't know about you, but one of my absolute pet hates in life is being on a 60 road and having somebody do 45. Usually it's an old person. You'd think they'd want to go quicker because they don't have much life left to enjoy.
Oh my God. And he has the driving gloves on. I love it.
Usually now there's a couple of cars between you, and if you overtake them, you're only going to meet a lorry. More and more cars on the road. It's just impossible with vehicles doing those speeds. But occasionally you get a Nissan Leaf doing it. And, well, I understand now, because this vehicle gives you trees. Oh, I got 2 trees. I got 2 trees. Yes, 2 trees. How many more trees are there to get? It gives you eco mode, which massively reduces the power. It gives you all the key pointers it wants to help you to go slowly, which is kind of comical when I have all the battery I'm going to need and it's super cheap for me to fill up with Octopus.
My link for Octopus is in the description. If you don't use Octopus, you can charge your vehicle up for 7p per kilowatt hour, which is just crazy. This thing is going to cost us about £3.50 to fill up, and it will do somewhere between 150 and 200 miles, depending on the weather, what moons are aligning on different planets, and all those sort of things. So what do I think of this car? Despite its flaws, which are not really flaws, it's absolutely perfect for what we need. As a town runabout, it does that job perfectly. And all of that for just £3.50 to do 150 to 200 miles. That is so much cheaper than petrol or diesel. You know, I've been waiting for electric vehicles to come down in prices and to be cheap and affordable for some time. Now, as far back as some of the earlier Tesla Model S's coming out, I knew I wanted to get an electric vehicle at some point. They should be a lot cheaper to run, and they're just perfect for town runabouts. But I think now we've reached that point where you can buy an electric vehicle for the same price, or maybe even cheaper than you could when you compare it to, say, a Golf. Now, I was comparing what you would buy if you bought a Golf 1.6 diesel. You maybe would get 55-60 to the gallon, might even be more, to be honest. They're pretty frugal. But this will still be cheaper to fuel. In the future, I really see DIYers doing battery swaps like this. Let's face it, if you're a DIY mechanic like myself, you're already going to need a piece of software to understand what's broken on your car. You're going to need to understand the sensors, as well as some electronics to a degree. You're going to need to get in wiring. So what difference is a battery? Now, okay, not everybody is so keen on getting into, as a DIYer, into batteries, and they might seem scary and out of reach. In the future, we might see DIY mechanics go on a training course, half a day, to understand the basics of electric vehicle systems. Or let's face it, there's loads of stuff on YouTube, and you can pretty much do anything when you go on YouTube, hey? All in, I am only at about £3,200. That includes the MOT, that includes getting it back to mine. That's the 600 quid for buying it and the battery. Now, I didn't get any discount on that battery for my YouTube channel. I contacted a company which I never actually used before, and they happen to have a pack, which means we're really getting into being able to buy electric vehicles now for bottom prices, but that are still able to do decent work for us. Honestly, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you'd get 150 to 200 miles of range for £3,200. Now, I know that not everybody is going to swap batteries like I am, but there are people that do this. There are companies that do this, and there is a cost to that. They're charging a lot more, maybe 4, 5, 6 grand, maybe even a little bit more depending on what it is. And I understand why they charge this. There's a lot of work in finding the right battery, warrantying that battery that's a second-hand battery from presumably a crashed vehicle, then all the fabricating that needs to be done and putting it in, and then test drives afterwards to make sure that it's okay. But let me know, how do you see the future of electric vehicles? Do you think that they are not DIY friendly? Do you think they are DIY friendly? What do you think people will be doing in the DIY scene in a few years' time? Now, I can't believe it. This battery change has been incredibly easy. There's the mud in my eyes. And if another Leaf came my way, I would 100% do the same again. I'd have to find a different angle to make it interesting for the channel, but it's got me on the bug for fixing up electric vehicles. So if there's anyone in the UK that has another electric vehicle, I'm kind of leaning towards Tesla, that has a battery issue or maybe a motor issue, and they're just done with the vehicle and they just want rid of it, then maybe drop me an email. My email's in the contact or whatever section of the channel homepage. This is not the end of the upgrades on this vehicle. There is something else to do, and my wife has spotted me running past the house with more parts, which you'll see later on the channel, because I think 109 horsepower just isn't enough, and we'll look at what remapping and those sort of options there will be for electric vehicles in the future. This vehicle does need a few tasteful modifications, and the first one is over here.
Don't push back. Oh. Don't push back. Oh. push back. Oh.
Are battery pack swaps for you? Would you do this?
What do you think the future's going to be for electric vehicles? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget, like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this fairly easy battery change. Let's hope that they're all like that, hey? Till next time, battery mail out. To be honest, they're not really flaws.